What are the key reasons behind a church plant in Morehead?
Yeah, so, and I think I said this at some point. We identified Morehead. Actually, Cassie was the first one to really name the place at the end of 2023. She said, "What if we did a church plant in Morehead?" Now, here's the reason why.
Have you ever felt like God was calling you to something more? Maybe you've sensed a nudge, a stirring that you can't quite put into words. That's what this podcast is all about. Here we share the story of God doing something new and powerful right here in Morehead, Kentucky. I'm Eli, and I'm excited to share this journey with you. In just a few minutes, you'll also hear from my friend Dylan Bjorklund, a minister, husband, father, and now church planter. He's stepping out in faith to follow God's call, and I think his story is going to inspire you. Before we jump in, I want to encourage you with these powerful words from Ephesians 3:20-21. Now to him who is able to do far more abundantly than all that we ask or think, according to the power at work within us, to him be glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations forever and ever. As you listen today, I want you to ask yourself, what might God want to do through you? You can do more than you imagine by his power for his glory. And maybe, just maybe, this episode will help you take that next step of obedience. I'm so glad you're here. Let's dive in. Hey, Dylan.
Hey, Eli.
How are you doing?
Doing great.
Good. We are recording episode 3 of the Morecast. So for those of you who've been listening, or maybe are jumping in right now, listening for the first time, we really appreciate you giving us your time, and we hope that this time is going to be beneficial for you. Dylan, give us a little bit on the latest. What's going on with your life?
So at the end of January, which was just a few days after we recorded the first couple episodes, our second little girl came into the world, Emma Gale. So she is now a month old. We had actually her 1 month appointment today. And she is like gaining a pound a week right now.
Oh, wow. That's good. You're doing things right.
That's right. So that's been exciting, an exciting thing for us here, just in our life. And we've loved being a parent, being parents. And so this has just added more joy in our life. And with the church, it kind of has been slow because, of course, we've been focusing on our family. But at the same time, a lot of administrative stuff has gotten done. I've been able to, we actually have finally named the church that we're planting in Morehead. It's Foothills Christian Church. And we got a website, foothillsmorehead.org. You can go check it out. It's got a landing page. And we filed our articles of incorporation with the state of Kentucky, got an EIN. So like tons of those things are moving, which is really cool. And it's nice, like I've been thinking about, it's probably not the first thing you should do, but it's nice, like thinking that's out of the way. We can go and do some other work now and don't have to get boggled down by that later.
Yeah. Awesome. Sounds like things are moving.
Moving
and shaking.
Yeah, they awesome.
are. Well, last time where we left off, Dylan, you'd been talking about your personal desire and calling into church planting, and you gave an awesome explanation for why church planting is necessary. So we wanted to kind of shift gears and get a little more specific. We've discussed the need for churches, but we want to talk a little bit about today why specifically you and your family in Morehead, Kentucky. What are the key reasons behind a church plant in Morehead?
Yeah, so and I think I said this at some point. We identified Morehead. Actually, Cassie was the first one to really name the place at the end of 2023. She said, "What if we did a church plant in Morehead?" Now, here's the reason why. So both of us are originally from Fleming County, which is the county that neighbors Round County, where Morehead's the county seat. And so we're familiar with that area. We know that area. And that area has been on our hearts for a long, long time because although there are a lot of churches around that area, many of them are struggling. A lot of them are having a hard time finding a guy to come in and fill the pulpit. There are some that don't have any elders in them. They've had a hard time just even not even bringing someone in to preach, but just training leaders up within their own church. And we felt for a long time that area we feel is one generation from being lost. And our other fear, and this is true in some ways of Eastern Kentucky, our other fear is that it was also very susceptible to cults of Christianity, like Mormonism, Jehovah's Witnesses, because they're making an impact in those kinds of places. And the challenge is, that they're very evangelistic. And the challenge is if they come knocking on your door or talking with you, and all of a sudden they start talking a little bit about the Bible, a little bit about this guy Jesus, and you, because grandma took you to church or whatever, have that knowledge at least, and maybe now you've got kids, you've got a desire to get back engaged in church, but you don't know any different, right? Because you've not really been trained up and equipped, and those were just some things that we sensed. And the reason we identified Morehead in particular was because there wasn't a Christian church in Morehead. We're from the Restoration Movement background, independent Christian churches and churches of Christ. And there wasn't a Christian church there. And there is, like in Fleming County where we're from, there's several actually. And so we thought, that here's a need. But the other thing that this is the thing that really got me excited, because then I realized not only here's a city who needs a Christian church, but also it has the university, Morehead State University, which has about 8,000 students. And the idea that came to my mind was, what if in a student's 4 years of public university, we were able to train and equip them to become effective disciple makers when they leave MSU and also disengage from our church because they're going somewhere else. They take those skills, that learning with them, and we help them get plugged into another church. And I begin to think, man, then our church could be like the Antioch of Acts 13, that we are filling other churches with on-mission disciple makers, leaders. And Eli, you're going to know this. Anybody who's in the church world knows there is a lack of preachers. There's a lack of leaders in the church. Many churches are struggling to get people to come and preach and teach, to get even people within their church to lead because they don't have the quality, the qualifications, the knowledge, whatever it is. And so my thought was, what about instead of in 4 years a student losing their faith, we instead build up their faith? Then I began to think about all those churches around, like Fleming County, where we're from or whatever. I'm thinking, man, I know Fleming County sends tons of students to Morehead. We graduated there. A ton of our graduating class went. Some of them land back in Fleming County. Not all of them. Some of them do. What if then we got them plugged into those churches? Then they become the Sunday school teachers, the small group leaders. They're on the pathway to becoming, elders of the church, whatever it is, those key leaders. And, a lot of times at these small churches, it's not multi-staff. It's run by volunteers. So then these people are they're your children's ministers, right? Your youth leaders and all those kinds of things. And so that really got me excited. So that was really the idea, the sense, and the burden. But here's the interesting thing, Eli, is that was all our perception. I should say it wasn't based on like no facts or anything like that, but it was a lot of anecdotal stories probably that we based that on. And what was really cool and confirming to us is as we were moving through this process and we began to tell more people about what we were doing, when they heard Morehead, they said yes. I mentioned the fellow from Billy Noble, the preacher out at Farmers Christian Church. He said there's a need, right? There was other people. I remember this Sunday we announced to Christview, the church that I left to plant, there was a family who had sent a child to MSU for a program while the child was still in high school. And they said, man, as much as we'd love to keep you here at Christview, we wish you were over there in Morehead like 4 years ago when our daughter was there.
Yeah.
So we just had a lot of that, right? So that was really the Lord confirming for us this sense that we had in other people. But then this is really cool. This past month, I've been putting together a lot of pamphlets and documents and things like this as I travel and speak. And one of the things Cassie encouraged me to do, she's like, Dylan, you really need to get some numbers. She said, because it'd be good if you just had some bullet points, kind of stats for people. So I started really doing some digging. And what I found out was our sense that we had about Morehead, Round County, actually had stats to support it. And in Kentucky, in the state of Kentucky, there's 120 counties. Okay. Round County ranks 114th in the state for church attendance.
Wow.
So meaning they're at the bottom of the list.
Yeah.
Now, here's the other thing that just struck us. Of the 6 remaining counties, 4 of them neighbor Round County.
Wow.
And so now think about our vision. Our vision was to go and establish a faithful New Testament Christian church who is on mission, who's going to be like Acts 13. It's bringing tears to my eyes thinking about this. And then to reach the university that's going to go and send out to these areas. In fact, that's part of the reason why we chose the name that we did for our church. It's typical in the Christian church world to name after based on a location. That's following the pattern of the New Testament. A lot of times churches too will try to name based on something they're doing, like a movement church, because they're always about moving forward or whatever it may be. But we chose Foothills because Morehead sits on the foothills of Eastern Kentucky, and we want to be a church on the base of the mountain, if you will, that is training and equipping leaders for the kingdom who are going to take the mountain for the kingdom. And so it was so incredible that the Lord just brought us to that. Now it was not just, hey, here's this sense we have. It's like, no, there's real numbers around this. People have done the math around it. There's a legitimate need. And so, which I should also say, Kentucky, everybody thinks, again, this goes back a little bit to the idea of church planting anyways. Everyone thinks in the state of Kentucky, Bible Belt, right? Everybody's right. Christian down there. Actually, the stats are 85% of Kentuckians do not attend church on a regular basis. That's huge. That's huge. And then where we're headed, they're at the bottom of the list. They're even more disengaged with the local church. So it was seeing the need in Morehead and then seeing the mission field, the opportunity of the university. And so, and I think about church planners, if anybody out there is ever thinking about, like how do you land on a location, all that. Ours, I think, a little bit had to do with this is home for us. And both my wife and I, we love family. We love being close to family. And so that's a draw. And sometimes people, and I don't know that you should always base your decisions in ministry of like moving necessarily closer to family. Sometimes the Lord may call you to move away. I mean, he did that with Abraham, right? Get up from your family, right? And move to this place. But I would also say that God can also use that. He can use that desire within your heart to be near family, to be near something that's familiar to you, to meet a great need. So you really just have to discern and really search your heart. But God can use it either way. So that's really the reason why we landed Morehead and then the university. Because the reality is, with the opportunity of the university, that's true of any university, right? Like that's not just true of Morehead. That's anyone that if there's and that's what I love about the church planning group we're working with, Be One Make One. This past weekend we were at a retreat with them or a learning school with them down in Cookeville, Tennessee, with Tennessee Tech. One of their church plants, they're doing the same thing. They are the church. Actually, their physical location is, less than a block from the university, and that's their whole vision too. So there's incredible that the university is an incredible mission field. And I would just say, if anyone happens to be on here listening, if your church happens to be near a university and you're not doing something, definitely reach out. I'd love to get you connected to our network, the Be One Make One group. You don't have to be a new church plant. They'd love to partner with you because it's an incredible opportunity. And I could go down a rabbit hole trail here, but even you think about international students. They come to universities, and then these students don't stay here in the U.S. They go back to their nations. Now let's go back to the Great Commission of Matthew 28, go and make disciples of all nations. And who's a better person to go and reach the nations? You and me, who are complete strangers and foreigners who don't even know the language, or their own people.
Yep.
Right? And it's their own people. And someone said this once, if we don't go to the nations, God will bring them to us. And he's done that in the university.
Dylan, you've mentioned Brown County being in eastern Kentucky several times. When I think of eastern Kentucky, I think of Appalachian culture, maybe some lower income with the loss of the coal mining industry. Even we've heard a lot about the floodings recently. When you look at the culture in eastern Kentucky and Morehead, what are some of the challenges maybe you see that might be different when it comes to planting a church there versus in a suburb or even an urban community? And what are some of the things about that culture that's just beautiful?
So here's the reality, just like with businesses, that they don't move into eastern Kentucky, right? Because there's just not the opportunity there and all that kind of thing. It's also, I think the same is true of churches. There are not a lot of people thinking about that area and wanting to move into there. Because it is more rural places. And, if you're trying to think about a successful church plant, you want to go where tons of people are, right? And that makes sense. And I'm not saying you ought not do that. And the cities need churches, right? But it's often a place that doesn't get thought about always in the church planting world. But it is very much so a needed place. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And some of the other barriers being in a lower income community, a lot of our prayer times for what makes for a successful church costs a lot of money, big buildings and programs and all this stuff that in communities like that, you just can't afford to do those things. But with, everything you're saying, there's also incredible opportunity, right? They're hungry for hope. It's why you mention, they're susceptible to some of the other religious movements that come through because they're hungry. They need hope. And so for people who are mission minded like you, that's not a scary thing. That is a potential harvest field.
Yeah, absolutely. The great thing about eastern Kentucky is it's that concept of Southern hospitality. You walk into a town, you can walk into a grocery store or Dollar Generals because they're everywhere. And you're I guarantee someone's going to stop and talk to you. You know what I mean? But you go to a more metropolitan area, you can walk through that same grocery store every day, and no one's ever going to say anything to you. So there are places that community is rich and deep. They have a great heritage and a lot of love and for their hometown and for their people. So that's why the opportunity's there. Ministry just may look a little different than it would in the suburbs or urban areas.
Yeah. You've touched on a lot of things that specifically connects to you and your family. What would you say is your main draw, the thing that you feel like is pulling you in to Morehead specifically?
I think it's the training of leaders. That has just always been on my heart. And at some point, someone gave this picture image that is stuck in my mind at some point in my life. Don't even know where it came from, but the guy was presenting at or preaching at some kind of conference or something. He was talking about a small little country church who was a sending church, meaning they sent a bunch of people out from their church to go and do ministry elsewhere. And he was talking about how they had a hallway within their church that had pictures of the individuals that they sent out from their church. And he said, you walk down that hallway and it's literally frame next to frame of people, preachers, elders, missionaries, Bible college professors, and all of this. And that image and that idea has always captivated me. I like to see myself as a teacher in some ways. It's a passion of mine. Like if I wasn't in preaching and ministry, like I probably would be a teacher. And so like that concept of training, equipping, teaching just has been my heart. And when you see the need in churches for leaders, for high quality leaders who are trained and equipped and qualified, and thinking, the Lord's given this ability and this passion for me to do this, I would say it's probably the biggest draw, because and that's why, like I said, Morehead, the university excites me more than anything else, because it's like I tell people, not only is it a harvest every year of new students who potentially don't know the gospel, it's also an opportunity every year for laborers to be sent out. So that's probably the biggest draw for us.
You talked about the that county being ranked 114th in church attendance. Have you thought about the challenge that might bring? Because it's probably a community that has a memory of Christianity, memory of church, and maybe that's not a great memory, or not a that memory is not something people get excited about.
Yeah.
And how might you address that? And also talking about that training leaders, how does that affect your vision for building a church when part of your mission is working with people that'll be with you for 3 or 4 years versus maybe for their whole lives?
Yeah, no, I think those are both really good questions, and probably things we can't fully, like you said, we'll have to talk about at another point. But quickly, that first one, the unique opportunity of Morehead, you're right. There, it is like most Kentucky. There is what we might call the Christian culture or the church culture. Cassie likes to call it the church building culture. And that is, a lot of times people will associate themselves with the church. They'll say, of course I'm a Christian, right? But they've not been engaged in a church, or they may even, when someone passes away, they'll put in their obituary, so-and-so was a member of such and such church. And that minister's like, I haven't seen them in years, right? So that's there. But here's what I would say. Yes, I think there will be some barriers that we'll have to tear down related to, sometimes we call it church hurt or whatnot. But here's where I think the opportunity, where the challenge really is an opportunity, is because I do think there is a hunger. And people know the truth. They know there is truth. They do have some kind of concept of it. And so if they can see real, authentic, they can see people love them or showing up, they want something to be a part of. I was on the phone with my mom, and I don't know if you've seen this, Eli, but Bible sales are up right now. Have you seen that? Yeah.
Or like 22% or something.
Yeah. Or the other stat that's interesting right now is that Christianity, which has been declining here in the U.S., is now plateauing for the first time. But okay, I say all of that, which is exciting. But I was telling my mom, I said, I am cautiously optimistic, because although those things are true, only 6% of self-professing Christians hold to a biblical worldview.
Yeah.
That means, right, that other 94% of Christians have mixed Bible with something else, And I personally, again, this is a sense, I think that has happened a lot where we're going in Morehead, because it has such a rich kind of, it is Bible Belt still, right? That whether Cassie's term's right, the church building culture, Christianity light, whatever you might want to label that, because it has that. But there is, I do think we're in a stage right now where there is a hunger. And I think it's kind of like Acts 17. It's people are, with Paul in Athens, they're interested, they're curious. And so I think to come in with solid biblical truth that's intelligent, and you talk about, that's the other thing that I've said is, it's a lot of times in those places, tough topics may get talked about, but not always very tactfully. Or other times tough topics get avoided altogether. It's like, man, if you can come in and talk about tough topics and do it with conviction and civility, I think there's just a hunger. So many people are hungry for that right now. So I actually think that's the opportunity there, despite maybe some of the challenges. And I think relationship and love tears down whatever past experience they had. That's why the new church planting, this is huge in the church planting world right now, is talking about getting back to disciple making, relational disciple making as a primary force, not an attractional model. Nobody's interested in that anymore. People have seen through it, right? Not to say it didn't work, not to say it's not effective at all, but most places, especially around county, they don't care that you have a social media specialist on your staff, right? They want or they don't want somebody standing out in the parking lot with a sign saying "Welcome home." Like they just real, genuine relationships, relational disciple making is the primary thing. So I think that is the opportunity, and I think it's what tears that down. Now, I say that, and I totally forgot what your second question was.
That's okay. We'll probably have to save it for later.
Okay.
But I will say this. It sounds like, because there's two things that I know about you, and you've spoken to both these things already. You are an incredibly relational person. People are drawn to you. You're drawn to people. People feel comfortable around you. And also, like you're saying, you have a passion and desire to teach. And when you're talking about the needs here, and I would agree, I see this with young people. Part of what happens with an attractional model taking over the church and the culture is some of those tough topics do get ignored for the sake of we don't want to offend anybody. Some of the teaching gets watered down, but people are hungry for truth. And so it just seems fitting that somebody who is passionate, who, if they weren't a preacher, they would be a teacher, that would be the kind of person that God would call to a church in a community with a university where they're students, they're learners, and where the need is, what's the phrase? Rightly dividing the word, And I'm confident that you do that.
Here's what I'm going to say, and this is like this thing of tackling hard truths and doing it tactfully. Like, let me it be a challenge to churches. Like, do not sway. Like, do not think that avoiding the topic is going to help your church grow. It is not. In fact, we are seeing in mainline denominational churches who have caved into progressive Christianity, they're dying. They are dying. And what I found was, because the church I was at, I addressed a lot of hard issues. And what it did is it brought people in. Like, people legitimately wanted to hear about it, right? Because they're hearing it everywhere else, right? And here's the truth, right? It's everyone's being discipled. Everyone's being discipled. It's a matter of who's discipling you. And your children are being discipled. They're being discipled on sexuality, on marriage, on life, on materialism, all these huge hot-button topic issues, right, in politics. And if you're not talking about them in the church, they're going to go get it somewhere else. So might as well have a tough conversation, do the homework, and address it front on. And I'm going to tell you, it grows a church. So
Well, thank you, Dylan, for sharing a little bit about Morehead and specifically why you're called to that community. For those of you who have been listening, again, if you are in the Morehead area and you want to reach out to Dylan, please do. We'll put the new church website in the show notes so you can learn about the church. But as always, reach out to him, and he would love to hear from you. Dylan, with that, I'll see you later.
Thanks, Eli.
Thanks for watching and listening to this episode of the Morecast. We hope you'll join us again for future conversations. We invite you to pray for the church plant and the people of Morehead. Your prayers mean more than you know. If you'd like to connect with Dylan or learn more about the church plant, don't hesitate to reach out. He'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care and be blessed.